there's a great discussion to be had about actually what, what is the nature of socialist agitation, and what kind of programs do socialists raise at times like this. Because actually, at a time like this, you don't raise the demand for socialist revolution.
Don't do that, I do.
Thank you. but actually, what is socialist agitation at the moment is trying to raise demands that can bring people into action to win positive demands, which seem to be in their own interest. So the task is to propose anti-capitalist structural reforms around which you can build united fronts that build mass action. But I'm also in favour of socialist revolution. But actually, my perception is in Britain that it's not possible to build a mass movement for revolution at the moment. Therefore, what you need to do is combine propaganda, where you're engaging in quite dense political argument with people who've come into action already. But actually, to build a movement, what you need is to develop the kind of actions that can build the kind of agency that's needed to change the world. Now, the comment from Workers' Liberty, maybe I heard Sean differently, but it seems to me that Sean explicitly spoke about the strong and confident labour movement as the agency for change. Maybe we were drifting out of the point of the conversation. But the task of generating that strong and confident labour movement is all about focusing on the kinds of practical demands which relate to the interests of working people now, whether or not they're realisable in the capitalist framework. You want to build mass action around them, and on the basis of that, build socialist consciousness.
Roy Wilkes, Manchester Socialist Resistance. I think the massive growth of financialisation, particularly of personal indebtedness, has benefited the ruling class in a number of ways. Not only in that it's enabled them to keep wage rates down, because we have to borrow money to maintain our incomes, but also I think it's actually contributed, importantly, probably more actually than the anti-union legislation, in holding down the levels of struggle. Because when workers are massively indebted and in danger of losing their houses, their homes, that in itself makes it much harder in the workplace to argue for the sort of level of strikes that we had in the 1960s and 70s. And so as we go into, I think we will go into a period of struggle in the near future, because the main focus of the attack of the ruling class on the public sector is also an attack on the most unionised section. So I think as we go into struggle, it's going to be to defend our pensions, to defend our jobs, to defend our living standards. I think it will inevitably create an opportunity to raise the political demands for security against removal from our houses, defaulting on mortgages and so on, because that's the only way that we can go into struggle. It's the only way that we can take that level of struggle is if we can actually take on the banks directly and raise the demand, not to be thrown out of our houses. So the things will combine. I think it's only in that sort of context of struggle that the sort of demands that have been suggested by Shaw become meaningful, not just abstract.
Okay, we've got about 3 minutes left. So you want to do this, and then anybody else?
Yeah, just briefly. I mean, I think one of the key problems that the far left has always had is how to get its message across to a broader audience. And in terms of the programs of action that we're talking about today, obviously it's still a problem of how to get that kind of message and alternative solutions across to a much broader selection of people. The combined readership of all the far left publications in Britain, never mind just the ones that are on today, are infinitesimally small compared to the kind of audience that we need to reach. And that's why it seems to me, as someone who's been involved on and off in the British far left for 25 odd years, that the important thing about green parties is not that they are perfect, and I'm sure that in many countries there's lots of things they've decided or done that can be justly criticised, but that I do think that they have a potential for the left to get involved and to get its message across to a much broader section of, a much broader and much more receptive section of society than they can reach on their own. And that's why it seems to me very important in this period for people on the left to interact with and preferably get involved in organisations like the Green Left, because through that they can actually get the kind of message that we're talking about today across, I think, to a much broader section of society than they can on their own. And it was very visible in the European elections that while the far left was often doing quite badly, admittedly with one or two exceptions like Portugal and so on, Green parties had some notable successes with a 40% increase in their votes in Britain and an enormous increase in France as well. So it seems to me that therein lies the importance, and it's more important for us not to shout from the barricades so much about their faults, but to interact politically in a positive way to try to reach a broader influence for that eco-socialist message. And it seems to me that Green parties and organisations like the Green Left are a potentially positive and important way of doing that.
Very much. Well, somebody else, I think that seems a bang on time to stop. Did you want to say anything in response?
Just very briefly, very briefly, on that question. I'm sort of hearing you speak, I've sort of had this sort of brief, sort of slight echo of perhaps I know now what it must be like to be, you know, in the Communist Party in 1956, really, you know. But all I can say is, for example, that you know, the British Green Party is actually rather isolated in the European Green Party. It's considerably related to many of the where really the Irish Green Party has actually called for a public apology for some of the things that the British Green Party have been saying about Ireland, and you know, the relationships are somewhat strained. And it's so that for every example of a sort of European Green Party atrocity that you can come up with, I can come up with, you know, probably half a dozen that you haven't heard of yet. But the thing is, the question is, you know, what do we do now? And I have to say that we just had a conference recently, was it last week, the week before last, and in that situation we had a situation where the parties, you know, adopted a call for the renationalisation of all ports and airports, has already got a policy for the nationalisation of public transport, an integrated transport system, etc., etc. In a situation where, well, I have to say, I mean, you know, we're all insects, comrade, but in a situation where we socialists in the Green Party are in a sect which is a left social democratic sect which might actually get 1 or 2 MPs elected. I mean, I think that for all the faults of the party, you know, it's worthwhile activity.
Okay, so we'll finish there, and thanks for attending.